portrait of an intimate portrait being painted. The Queen by Rolf.
Behind this curtain is my official portrait of Her Majesty the Queen, and in a few moments it's going to be revealed to the press of the world for the very first time. I've given it my best shot and I hope you like it. It's been an unforgettable experience for me, and it all started way back in June at Buckingham Palace. I can hardly believe it, but up there in the palace, the Queen of England is expecting me. I've painted hundreds of portraits in my time, but this one is going to be very special. I'm so excited. My painting will be in honour of the Queen's 80th birthday this year. It's a tremendous privilege. This is my second visit to the palace.
Morning.
A few days ago, I came to prepare everything for the sittings, and I even chose an outfit for the Queen to wear.
How old is gear? Out of here.
My painting is all sort of planned out in my head, and hopefully I've brought everything I'm going to need.
Morning. Morning.
This is it. The Queen's been painted over 120 times by some magnificent artists. And of course there are countless unofficial portraits, even ones made from postage stamps and jelly beans. In fact, the Queen's face is the most reproduced face in history, on coins, banknotes, and on at least 180 billion stamps. All the portraits. This King George V. Queen Alexandra. They're magical portraits, aren't they?
They are.
All the jewellery. King Edward VII. The size portrait I'm going to do. Compare the size of the canvas. It's good. What a fantastic opportunity for me to meet the Queen and to paint her portrait. And you're going to be here every moment of the way with me, watching that painting develop. And hopefully I can do a really good painting. I know what I want to do. I want to do an impressionist painting which conveys the real personality of the real person, rather than a formal state occasion type portrait. Whether I can do it to my satisfaction or not, who knows? I've got this canvas right close here so that when I step back, then the Queen's face will be on exactly the same plane as the canvas, so I don't have to readjust the size. It'll be the size that I see will be the size that I paint. Makes it so much easier. And I've got a little light sitting right up high there just to put a bit of a glint on the back of the hair and the shoulders, hopefully. Anyway, I can't actually believe I'm doing it. I thought I'd be much more nervous than this, but I'm a little apprehensive and very excited, and the Queen will be arriving any minute now, so wish me luck.
Rolf Harris.
Oh, good afternoon.
Your Majesty, lovely to meet you. We've got a wonderful seat lined up here, which you probably know very well.
I haven't sat in it before.
The Queen has sat for dozens of portraits in this room, but this is the first time the whole thing's been captured on camera. I don't know who's more uncomfortable, me or the Queen. That's lovely, yeah. I don't know what to say. You're okay with the smell of turpentine, I hope?
Well, we'll tell, won't we, soon?
Oh.
I didn't.
Right.
I would have thought it was all right.
Good, good. My approach is to just to break down the canvas, kill the white, so that it's not scaring the living daylights out of me. If you have a huge, expansive white canvas, it's just awful. Now, that shoulder will be about there. I hope this canvas isn't too close. Imagine if I sloshed paint all over the Queen. You missed a very good changing of the guard.
I know, because it's dull doing it in the afternoons. You get all the fun of the music and everything going on here in the mornings.
There was a great bang when they fired a gun at about midday, which frightened the wits out of all of us.
Do you know why it was?
No.
Nor did I. But I had to look it up.
And you're not going to keep me.
Coronation Day. It's a long time ago.
I was there on that morning. I was sitting out in Hyde Park with a blanket round me, had the accordion playing songs all night, waiting for you to come along in the golden coach. It was wonderful.
It was very cold and wet, I seem to
It was a bit drear. If you could just look at me for a second. That's good. This takes me back a little bit to 1946, and I was a member of a sort of art class in Western Australia, and the exhibition was to be opened by Sir James Mitchell, who was the Governor of Western Australia. So my mother, with an eye to the main chance, got me to paint a portrait of him from a newspaper article. And then when he was opening it and he got to my portrait, my mother leapt upon him and said, "My son would like to paint you in the flesh." And I was over the side there dying with embarrassment. And he said, "Have the boy contact my secretary." So I then had to pluck up the courage and ring the secretary. And he said to me, "Sir James can give you an hour from 10 to 11. So I got there about 10:30 and I hung around until 20 to 11, and I thought, better to be early than late. So I went in, and Sir James had been waiting for 40 minutes, and he said, "You must learn to be more punctual, young man." I thought he meant an hour from 10 to 11. And of course he meant an hour from 10 to 11. So I was too nervous to explain why I'd been late. But oh gosh, that was awful. Talk about embarrassing. I was 16 then, so you can imagine how nervous one is.
Silly secretary. Do you go back? I mean, do you keep in touch?
Not as much as I'd like to. I was there last year for the whole month of January, and it was so hot. You forget how hot it is, and I'm so unused to that heat.
I think I've been hotter in Sydney than I've been anywhere.
But then, of course, you can go to Sydney in midsummer and it's pelting with rain. You never quite know.
It's like you go to Canada and you get wet. Every time there's 40,000 people to see, you get wet. Or they get wet. I think they said in Saskatchewan they only get 14 inches a year. It all seemed to dump itself on us in one day.
I can't believe I'm talking to the Queen about the weather. I need to focus on what I'm doing here.
What I try and do is paint the whole canvas, really, the whole thing as a blur, and then slowly refine the blur and try and...
Sounds an interesting way of doing it.
Well, it's an approach which I find works for me.
What's the sort of plan of your picture? I mean, is it...
Trying not to do a formal state occasion type painting, but something to try and capture the real you.
I'm very happy with the dress I chose for the Queen. The colour really suits her, but it's going to be tricky to get it right. And the Queen's so relaxed, that'll make it much easier for me to capture her real personality.
I hear my mother in myself quite often when I'm concentrating. I'm forever going... She used to do that all the time.
Did she?
Especially when she was annoyed, she would go... She would do that sort of tuneless whistle thing, and you think, uh-oh.
You knew something.
Yeah, get out of the road quick because you've done something which has annoyed Mum. You find portraits a terrible chore?
No, not really. It's quite nice. Just usually one just sits and people can't get at one because they know one's busy doing nothing.
That's good.
After 40 minutes, a figure is just starting to emerge from the blur. But I'm sure Her Majesty wouldn't recognise herself yet. I dread to think what the Queen's reaction would be if she saw this now, although I'm told she never comments on a portrait. But with so many paintings done over 80 years, I wonder what she really thinks about them.
The trouble is you see yourself ageing in front of you.
Does that upset you?
Nah,
Not really.
I'm used to it now.
That's good, because I really want to paint a truthful portrait. And like me, she is a grandparent after all.
You get a lot of joy from grandchildren. Our little lad, he's just turned 9 and had a book and he was reading. Said to his mother yesterday, "What are the Aborigines?" His mother said, "No idea." And she showed her the word Aborigines.
Oh, wonderful.
Aborigines, great word.
It is rather.
Yes. It was really perfect. I was forever stopping my father and saying, "Don't move, don't move, I'm going to catch you just like that." And I'd say, "Oh, there's a wonderful light just coming round the corner of it." And as I'd get my finger there, he'd go like that, and I would jump every time. Frighten the wits out of me every time, and I was never ready for
I
it.
fell for it, did you?
Every time. "Don't move, Dad. I've got to catch this wonderful light. It's just coming through the bang." And he'd go. He's a lovely bloke.
I've been so busy chatting, I haven't got nearly as far as I'd hoped, and I'm almost out of time.
Do you find that you're anxious to see what's being done, or you just leave it alone? Leave it. Stay out of it.
Well, I might take a look as I go out.
I hope to be able to do some work on this at home between now and the next sitting. But would I be able to take some
Yes,
photographs
do.
of you? Yeah. I was going upstairs the other day and I had a cup of coffee in this hand, the camera in this hand, and I was wearing shorts and sandals, and my sandal hit the step, the front of the step, and I went boom, coffee everywhere, and I grabbed the banister and thought, "Where's the camera?" Bang! And I hear it hitting the ground down at the ground floor. Smashed, and batteries came out, and I thought, "Oh, lovely camera." I've stuck it together and it still works, so if I could just put these down and I'll get a couple of shots.
It's all covered in sticky dust.
Yes, I've sprung that hinge there, that's wrecked completely, so that pops open and the batteries fall out. But it still works beautifully. Oh, that's perfect. If you can imagine you're looking out there and you just turn back to me and imagine you're thrilled to pieces to see me. That's really good. I'll show you that and see if you're happy with that.
That looks all right.
Lovely, thank you.
So when is the next one? Is it
10
next-
days,
10 days
22nd. I'd offer you my hand, but it's
No,
covered
I
in paint.
didn't. I can do that. That's very speedy.
Well, it's a start. It's not you by any shape or form at the moment, but it's a start. And once I get that going, I'll have that shining against the face, so the face will be slightly darker than the window there. And this colour I'll get right, hopefully. It's just a rough idea at the moment, but yeah, it's a start.
It's very clever.
Thank you so much for today.
That's all right. It's been about 10 days' time.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
See ya.
I'd shake you by the hand, but as I said, covered in paint, and you wouldn't want to do that.
Bye.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Wasn't she lovely? Well, I've got to get this home and get on with doing some work on this. See whether to go for the smile, the ordinary straight smile, or whether I want to see teeth showing in that smile, or who knows. But I'll certainly work on it and see what we can, how we can progress it from here. Wish me luck.
Gosh, imagine living among these grand portraits of your ancestors. Must be like walking through the pages of a giant family photo album, and one that goes back for centuries. The first royal portraits were put on coins as a way for kings like William the Conqueror to tell everyone that he was the boss. Painted portraits are more recent. This one of Richard II is probably the earliest, painted in 1390. I doubt it looked much like him. It was just meant to show how holy he was. And most other portraits of early kings were completely made up hundreds of years later. But here at Windsor Castle, the Queen's favourite home, I've been invited to see some wonderful portraits of her distant ancestors.
Windsor's my local town. I can remember coming here to the castle way back in the 50s when I first arrived in England and painting a self-portrait to send back to Mum and Dad in Australia. So coming here now, it's a great opportunity for me to see a whole range of royal portraits. And hopefully I can get some idea of the sort of traditions that artists have followed in portraying British kings and queens.
Royal portraiture really started with the most famous of the Tudors, King Henry VIII. I'm lucky enough to be shown this portrait by the man who looks after all the Queen's paintings.
They were superb self-publicists, weren't they?
Their image is absolutely critical, but not necessarily just crude magnificence. That's not the only thing.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps we're a little bit sad that it's not by Holbein, but you can see what Holbein brought to portraiture.
Hans Holbein was one of Henry's favourite court artists and painted the most successful and memorable portraits of him.
And of course it's from Holbein's original portrait of Henry VIII, and that's the image that we all remember now as Henry VIII.
Yeah.
You know, his hands on his hips, the
and,
colossus,
you know,
the big shoulders and the huge chest.
Branding.
Yes.
You know, that's the brand, as it were. You're going
Yeah.
No, you did completely. And that business of looking directly out, it crops up again and again in royal portraiture.
Elizabeth I was an even bigger fan of portraits, and the trend she set brought great artists such as Anthony van Dyck to England to paint later kings like Charles I. His grand symbolic portraits set the pattern for centuries, right up until George III introduced more informal portraits of his family by artists like Zoffany and Gainsborough. This informal approach really took off in Queen Victoria's reign. We still saw traditional state portraits, but thanks to Prince Albert's passion for photography, we also saw the royal family looking more natural than ever before.
Photography really has shaped the whole way that the public see the monarch today.
Yes, absolutely. And as we are now standing in front of the state portrait, in the past, this would have been the single image which would have been controlled, copied, circulated, and would have been the official image. Whereas now perhaps this is not the most familiar image of Queen Elizabeth II.
But of course nowadays there are more than 100 official portraits of Her Majesty, and so it makes it so much more difficult for an artist to know how to approach or how to have a new approach to a portrait.
Yeah, I'm glad that's not my problem. That's right.
Seeing all these wonderful paintings is inspiring, but it's scary too. I'm sure every artist feels the same butterflies in the stomach when they realise they're going to paint the Queen.
The day in the Secretary General's office, I was there with my son, and he described it to my husband afterwards, and he said, Mommy just jumped up and rugby tackled everybody in the room. and that I felt so excited, so elated. And then afterwards, I thought, gosh, will I be able to do this? How will I carry it off?
Fear. It is fear. Not because I didn't think I'd make a decent picture, but it was because I knew that everyone would want to judge me on it. Oh no, I was completely up for the job. Yeah, bring it on, yeah, quite. It was... Yeah, no, I was going to take that gig, I tell you. There was a lot of artists who would have killed for that one. Oh yeah.
I need to keep my chin up and remember what a fabulous opportunity this is, even though it is a bit daunting. I've just got to get up in the studio and get on with it.
So, here we go.
It'll be some time before this really looks like the Queen. I've got a lot of meticulous work ahead of me.
This is all really very rough at the moment, and I have to establish the actual shape of the hair. And there's a really fiercely bright light defining the edge of Her Majesty's face. Another brush. In the hurly-burly and the panic of being in the palace and trying to get this all started, I just used an indeterminate colour there for the shadow area, and it's come out very green. So I've got to knock that on the head and get a bit of a purpley pinkish colour in there. That's more like it. And some highlights into the eyes as well, which will be nice. Just to go in there like bling bling. What a difference.
I hope I've chosen the right approach for this painting. I'm working on a narrow canvas because I don't want anything to distract the eye from the Queen herself, and there'll be no flashy royal paraphernalia. I think staying informal will suit my Impressionist style. Other artists have taken traditional approaches, painting the Queen in full state robes, while others have been much less formal and even controversial. That's largely thanks to the Queen, because she allows all her painters complete artistic freedom.
I was pretty well left to my own vision, really, and how I wanted to interpret the brief and where I wanted to take the image. And I didn't want to get too distracted by what had been done in the past.
I mean, this is quite extraordinary, because I have now painted a few captains of industry and so forth, and believe me, they're vain. I mean, they care. Now, the royal family are either completely without vanity, or they are so disciplined that they wouldn't let you know they didn't like the shape of the nose or the cast of the mouth. Never a murmur on that.
The idea of doing a hologram just seemed a lot more modern and contemporary, and it was put to the Queen, how about a holographic image as the portrait? And apparently she was tickled by the idea.
I had been round the National Portrait Gallery and I had identified that big portrait by Lavery of George V and his family. And I thought, you know, that's a fantastic idea. It was a much more kind of gentle, relaxed family painting. It's ridiculous, I know, but I wanted to paint a painting on that scale.
The main thing I want in my painting is for the Queen to look happy.
Which is the marvellous thing about photographs. If you've got a photograph of a smile that really works for you, it's going to be the same every time. So I've got some reference to come back to. Now.
And that smile looks really nice and relaxed with the teeth showing. I love it. It's not easy though. I worry about whether I get a good enough likeness.
That colour basically establishes the background colour for the teeth, and when that's a bit drier I'll put the highlights on the edges of them. But it starts to work, I think. The painting of the young Queen Elizabeth by William Dargie, the Australian painter, in 1954 was just exquisite. And I think to every Australian that was their image of their Queen that they wanted to remember. And if I could do something anywhere near the quality of that painting, I would be thrilled to bits. We both have the same impressionist approach. Wow, that's amazing. You get back this far and have a look at the whole thing. I've been concentrating on the teeth. And I've got some sort of a sneer there. Now what can I do with this? And this can come down a little bit in there. That's a bit better, but I'm going to have to come back to that smile when it's dry. Perhaps I'll tackle the dress now. Windsor Emerald, very appropriate. This is a tricky colour and I can't rely on this photocopy. What I'm going to do is see if I can borrow that dress and get it down here to my studio so that I can actually see the reality of the colour. Anyway, I'll get on and rough out the lights and the darks for now. Gee, that's still not the right colour, is it? I'm going to come back to this tomorrow. I've had enough for now. I've got 8 days left before I'm back at the palace, and I can't get myself motivated to paint today. Just can't. And even though it's getting late, my mind's going round and round thinking about the portrait. I've got to do some work on it. Oh, that colour is so wrong on the dress. And that goes across there like that, something like that. I'm not really making much progress here. I'm just fiddling around with the background and I'm starting to flag now. That's it. Time for some sleep. It's just after 5 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't sleep. I'm thinking about it. It's something of a likeness and it's getting better, but it's got to be better still. I'm getting very fussy and fiddly. It's not like I want to be. I want to be braver and bolder, but I want to get this likeness right first. Down in the coal mine, underneath the ground, where the gleam of sunshine never can be found, digging up the dusty diamonds all the season round, deep down in the coal mine, underneath the ground. I've got that go round and round in my head. Where it came from, I'll never know. I'm still not really achieving anything here. Just too tired to concentrate. See you later. I've slept a bit more, but not much. And I've woken up in a panic because it's only a week before I'm back at the palace and I've got to make a lot of progress before then. Might as well crack on. I'm really stuck with looking down on this and getting a wrong perspective. I really want to be there in relation to that. I think I'll try turning the whole painting over. Let's lift that up a little bit. 1, 2, 3, yep. Now you see how you immediately don't recognise any of it. Okay. Lovely to hear the little birds just outside the window. Lovely. What a lovely colour. I can see the headlines. Australian paints the Queen upside down. But it does sharpen up your view of things when you don't have to relate them to recognisable parts of the human body. You just see them as shapes and you can paint them with much more confidence, I find.
That's good. I feel as if I'm back on track now. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to have to work hard, but I'm sure it's going to come together in the next few days.
Let's turn it up the right way. Now it's all wet there. 1, 2, 3, yep. I'm very pleased with those hands. The shape of them is good, and I like the little bits of blueness in there. I don't want to muck about with the impression of the hands. I want to leave that to dry completely, and then I'll darken it down a little bit. I'm a bit shattered, so I'll call it a day.
I feel as if I'm on a roll, but I'm too busy to paint for a day or two. Life doesn't stop, you know, even for a royal portrait artist.
Well, I'm blessed. Go away for a couple of days, come back and see it with fresh eyes, and all the mistakes jump out at you. What to do first? Arms, I think. Yeah.
Any artist will tell you some days you just can't get anything right. I've got no idea why I struggled a bit last week, but I think I've turned the corner now. Everything's coming together, and I'm actually enjoying this.
Bit of colour on the brush would help, wouldn't it? Just darkening that down a little bit. I'm scumbling now, but using my thumb, so I guess I should call that thumbling. What do you think? I don't care. I don't know why I tell you these wonderful, interesting things.
The painting's going really well, but I'm still a bit nervous about the next sitting, and it's hardly surprising. Being so close to the Queen is such an extraordinary experience for anyone.
All the time, I was constantly aware of this is the Queen. This is the Queen. That's the experience I wanted to portray in the painting.
A particularly surreal moment was when Her Majesty arrived in the room, bang on time, 3 o'clock, and I thought that perhaps it was a team of people to put the crown on, but Her Majesty just casually placed it on, and it was quite a magical moment, actually.
When she came in, I think she could see then I was nervous, and she actually just started telling jokes. And I'm standing there drawing, thinking, well, this is the Queen. I don't think she tells jokes, so obviously it isn't a joke, so don't laugh or anything.
I would not have imagined her being jolly. I mean, I'm sure that's grossly unfair, but I wouldn't have done from the way she conducts her public things. But she is. You know, she just talked like mothers talk about their children and so forth, and she was very funny. And I just enjoyed it enormously, except the fact that she wouldn't sit still, which of course is a problem that everyone encounters with the Queen.
She must be painted 3, 4, 5 times a year. It must be a frightful bore for her. And then also never to be able to give an opinion on the works afterwards. If someone painted me and it was really awful, I'd say, that is a bloody awful painting. She can't say that, you know, and I bet she's dying to. You know.
Today's going to be a big day. I've just had my delivery from the palace.
I feel so privileged. The Queen has been kind enough to let me borrow the actual dress that she was wearing on the day of the sitting. It's very tricky with this little minute pattern. Almost looks like another colour mixed in with that turquoisey, bluey, greeny, lovely colour. Let me try and get it right. Turquoisey blue there. Green in there. White.
I chose this colour, so I better get it right.
It's so difficult to try and achieve that colour. That's pretty good. Get a small one. That's good. A little bit of that drying linseed oil into that. Mix it up a little bit. Give it some wetness. Let me see if that relates. I won't get any on the dress. I promise. But that's not bad, is it? A little bit more cerulean blue in it, maybe. Let me just try a bit on there. Now, I think what I should do is do a sort of a Van Gogh crosshatch to see if I can get the sort of
pattern in the weave of the dress. Gosh. That's good. That starts to have a little bit of life and vibrancy in it there. What I'm doing here is just trying to ease the edge of the dress into the background so you don't see an actual finish of one and a start of the other. I want that to be like, I don't know what the Italian word is, sfumato or something like that, which is like there's smoke around the edge. You're not quite sure where the line is. Leonardo da Vinci was a master of that. I'll never forget when I chose this outfit. I'd asked for something bright and vibrant, and they brought me a whole rail of the Queen's dresses, lovely pinks, yellows, and I chose this turquoisey, bluey green, which has been so hard to get right. Gosh, that's lovely. That's really good. I like that. I think I'll call it a day. Right, I get this dress back, hands clean, yes. Get the dress back to the palace now. My next trip to the palace is in just a few days, so the pressure's really building because I have to be ready. And that means all the basic features done and finished so I can concentrate on subtle details. A few more late nights in the studio and I think I'm finally ready to go to the palace. I've just heard that they've cancelled all the Queen's engagements for the foreseeable future because she's not well. She's got a very bad cold. I just got myself all psyched up to do the second sitting. Have to wait till they let us know when that's going to be possible. And I hope she gets better really soon. It's going to be horrible waiting because I can't do any more with the painting. And the longer I wait, the more I worry. What will all the papers say? There's always such a fuss when there's a new portrait of the Queen.
Everybody had heard about it. Everybody wanted to come and have a look at it. They really made me feel very proud. I had one negative reporting which lumped me with the top British artists anyway who he didn't like. And I thought, if I'm in their company, I'm quite happy. I don't care if he says the work is rubbish.
My picture of the Queen got leaked to the Sunday Times weeks before the official unveiling. It was absolutely mental. It was completely extraordinary. I had TV crews from Ottawa. I had radio shows from Johannesburg. I had Time magazine ringing up. I had Italian Vogue. I had just nuts.
We were all over OK and Hello and that kind of thing, and all the papers. There wasn't a paper that didn't carry it. And that was terrific. Oh, the critics thought it was absolutely ghastly. I think it is a very odd and striking painting. Yeah, I'm proud of it. Yeah.
I think generally the response has been positive. You know, it's controversial in that it's a hologram. It doesn't fit into the conventional mould of royal portraiture. I think it's quite a historic piece of work.
The broad attitude was it was a flippant piece of work. I was called a silly artist. In a way, they were somewhat right in what they said because it is so difficult to make a totally successful portrait of someone so well known.
After another week of tense waiting, I've finally got the call from the palace. You stay here, dogs. I can't wait to get going again. And I do hope she feels better. The second sitting's essential, and I've got just under an hour to work on the finer details. Oops, already. Your Majesty. Would you care to take your place now? I do feel for the Queen. Despite a dreadful cold, she's just spent the entire Trafalgar celebrations on a boat in miserable weather. I hope you're feeling much better than you were.
No, I'm not, I'm afraid. I think the day out to sea didn't do me any good at all, but it's, I think the doctor just says it'll get better.
good. Well, we'll make
It has
this.
horrible things, you know. They
Yeah.
tack your throat. You can't do much.
Dear, oh dear. She must feel awful. It can't be much fun sitting here all afternoon. I hope I can help her to relax.
A couple of weeks ago I was down in Wales at a function, and one of the people involved in organising it said, "Did you know there's a painting by your granddad out in the main hall upstairs?" And I said, "No." So he took me upstairs, and there is a painting by my grandfather of your grandfather, George V, reviewing the troops in the 1418 war in the trenches. And it sent all shivers up and down the back of my spine. It was really lovely.
And you didn't know it was there?
No, I didn't, no. That was just before he moved out with the whole family, moved out to Australia, lock, stock and barrel, and he made a decision to head out there. I'm trying to get some sort of a pattern into the material rather than have it all flat. I'm trying to take in all these little knobbles and things, and without painting each individual bump. And still trying to keep it looking like an impressionist painting, which is what my aim was in the first instance.
I can't seem to get going this time. Why am I still painting the dress?
I think I'll get right off that now and tackle the brooch. Fascinating brooch.
I'm so pleased the Queen was happy to wear this brooch because I know it has a very special meaning for her.
I think it's fairly original.
It's exquisite work, isn't it?
I hope this will be a real highlight in my portrait. The Queen had this brooch made especially for her mum, for the Queen Mother's 100th birthday. Must be such a precious possession.
Can you remember your very first portrait sitting?
Yes. At Laszlo.
When you were a little girl.
Horrid he was.
Was he?
Well, he was one of those people who wanted you to sit permanently looking at him.
Don't do anything, yeah.
I don't know where it's gone. No.
You don't know where the portrait is?
No.
Do you keep a lot of the portraits?
No, none. No, they're all painted for other people.
Would you like to keep
No.
some of them? Had enough of looking at yourself?
Well, I got the one picture at Windsor, that state portrait. That's the only one.
Right.
Oh, and the dog I've got. That's in my room.
That was my favourite of all the ones I've seen of you. It was just exquisitely done, coming out from the black background, and that was that sort of inspired me. And I'm thinking to myself, if I could ever do something which was anywhere on a par with that sort of quality, I would be thrilled. Yeah, fine artist.
He painted two at a time, didn't he?
I didn't know.
Yeah, he painted two at a time.
Of the same?
Mm-hmm. And I don't know which one I've got.
When you said you had it at home, I thought, that's weird, because I thought Australia House had one,
Exactly.
or somebody in the Australian government had.
Well, it was I think the Prime Minister had it, didn't he? He just painted
I
really
thought-
for him.
Yeah, I thought so, yeah.
But he painted two at a time, so he just picked the one he liked best.
And did that go to you?
No, I got the other one.
Wow.
But I mean, he knew, I didn't. You know, I couldn't tell.
On the last sitting, I was going to suggest possibility of bringing the corgis in, but whether they would have been able to be still, I don't know what they're like.
Oh no, that's one of them would.
Yes? Are they easy to train?
Yes, they're healers. You know, they're cattle dogs.
Yeah.
So they bite. They chase people. Depends who they chase, though. Well, the sentries used to have a bad time.
Yes. Do they chase them?
The present lot don't, but they did, yes. I think if somebody stamps and threatens you with a big stick, you know, when they go past, it's rather a natural reaction for a dog to.
Yeah. We've got two huge dogs at home, a standard poodle and a Weimaraner, and they wouldn't stay still for a minute. They'd be everywhere. Any sound, and woo, they're out there barking at the gate. Gosh, in my time in Animal Hospital, there were so many animals that we saw misbehaving in the waiting room. But then again, of course, we saw the cases of animal neglect and cruelty to animals that you just couldn't believe.
It was like the lady who had 30 animals in a house the other day.
Oh, 30. We've had a lady with, I think it was 125 cats and dogs, and all living throughout the flat, everywhere, and just...
And never going out.
Going on the carpets. It was just appalling, so upsetting, so powerfully upsetting.
I suppose it still goes on.
Oh, yeah.
Some people go on holiday and need their children by it too, don't they?
Oh, yes. That's better. I think I could move the watch face around that way, down to about there. That's no, the
other way.
Well, that's it.
To know that there's a watch.
That's it. Perfect. Just want to see. I need to put a bit more lovely bright gold colour in there. Do you have a specific style of painting that you like?
Well, I mean, I suppose landscape is quite nice. I went to the Stubbs exhibition yesterday, which is lovely.
Amazing man he was. I read a little bit about his life just recently, and he studied horse anatomy.
Yes, well, all those studies are in the exhibition, which are fascinating.
I gather he used to get any horse died anywhere around him, he would get them to bring the carcass to his studio, and then he would dissect and study all the
muscles
and the way the bones worked, and they said the place stank to high heaven. You know, it was just appalling. But what an artist!
Just as well have been a butcher, mightn't he? Really. But what he did, unfortunately, was that he experimented terribly with his canvases. And we've got one which is flaking off. You can't stop it.
Experimentation with the paint itself.
I don't know, he primed it wrong or something. It's terribly sad.
Well, this painting of mine has started to come to life, but something important is missing. What have I forgotten?
The pearls, I haven't looked at the pearls yet. Gosh, I need to start working out how to do this. I'll just put in a basic background colour and then do all the tiny highlights on the pearls later when it's all dry.
And they're not easy things to paint, I should think.
No, you've got to get each individual pearl has its own lustre and its own shape.
And there's a picture of Queen Alexandra at Sandringham. She's wearing a pearl thing all the way down her dress, which is rather grand. I've never tried that.
Do those jewels still exist?
Most of them, yes.
Do they get altered and changed for
My
today's
grandmother
fashion?
altered a lot.
Do you ever have a desire to do the same sort of thing and change jewellery around for yourself?
I don't wear jewellery very much unless I have to. So, I mean, my grandmother gave me the tiara for a wedding present, and I only discovered after I succeeded and got into her safe that I realised she'd taken the base off it.
It was about that much taller, was it? Wow.
So it's back on again. I suppose she thought, child's only 21, doesn't need to have a very big one. And anyway, she had mountains of hair too, because she had that very tall way of wearing her hair, so she needed something very high.
I might try and tack a little bit more of that curtain at the back coming down there. I'll try and get that as accurate as I can.
Have you painted me today? Or have you?
I haven't done anything with you today, but I should do, shouldn't I? Now that you're here. Actually, if you can just look up at me again for a second.
Do you paint at home? I mean, do you take it back and
Yeah,
paint it?
I've been doing some stuff in my studio. I sometimes wake up at 3 in the morning and I can't sleep, so I've got daylight fluorescence in the studio so that the colour will be right. That definitely goes in.
And is the painting in the middle of the night as good as the painting other times of the day?
Yes,
matter.
I think so, yes. You're remarkably well concentrated because there's no other distraction around of any sort. Well,
You've reached the stage where...
I think so, yes. I've got that reference photo which will be just perfect for all the background and for your face. I'd just like to take this opportunity of thanking you on behalf of the whole crew. Thank you so much.
I think it looks very nice. Friendly, anyway.
Yes, that was my main aim.
Well, that's very clever, I think.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much once again from us all.
Much fun. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Success.
Well, I'm so thrilled that Her Majesty likes the happy feel of it, the friendly look on the face, because that was the main aim of the painting for me, to get the real person and the friendliness of that real person rather than the formal state occasion. And I'm glad I've got that green changed to a bit of blue. I chose the dress and I've had so much trouble getting the colours right. A lot of work to be done on the pearls and on the sparkle on that beautiful brooch. I'm looking forward to doing it.
Like the painting, Woo. Kedge, come on. Here's a good...
I can't believe how well that went. All the effort to get ready was worth it. But now I am absolutely exhausted. Somewhere I need to find the energy to pick myself up and finish off the painting. Well, I haven't even put brush to canvas for a couple of days, but I've just had some inspiring news from the palace. As you know, my favourite portrait of the Queen is by Australian artist William Dargie, who was later knighted. Now, I've always known that the Dargie portrait was in Australia, so you can imagine how amazed I was when the Queen said that he actually painted 2 portraits of her at the same time and presented one of them to her. I couldn't believe it. Well, I've just been told that the palace has brought the Dargie portrait out especially for me, so I'll be able to have a closer look, and I can't wait. I'm so thrilled. I've loved this image of the Queen since the very first time I saw it. Hard to credit that he did 2 of them at the same time. He painted them in 1954, and the other portrait was adopted by the Australian government as the official portrait of the Queen. You would see reproductions of this lovely painting in town halls, schools, libraries, public buildings all over Australia. Elizabeth wore this dress on her first visit to Sydney as Queen. The pattern and the flower on her shoulder are mimosa, or what Australians call wattle blossom. So everybody calls this the wattle portrait. Apparently this tiara was left to the Queen by her grandmother, Queen Mary. I wonder if it's the same one she mentioned to me, where she'd had to have the bottom bit taken off. I love the impressionist nature of this little earring that you see, and you assume it's got all the same detail as that one, except it's just a little blur in the shadow. And I always imagined that Dargie had painted this, first of all, with a dark background and painted the picture on that. But I see there's certain areas of canvas still showing, so obviously he worked onto the natural canvas with the colours. She looks so regal and yet so human and so beautiful. I love it. I must say it's wonderful to see this painting. It's given me just the boost that I need to get on and finish my painting and stop worrying about little details. Right, I'm on the home straight now. I've still got layers and layers of detail to add, but looking forward to it. I'm going to lock myself away for a couple of weeks and I'm not going to be distracted by anything or anybody until I've got it finished to my satisfaction. I'm going to need to do 3 or 4 more layers of lights and darks before those pearls are right. Enjoy getting the detail on this brooch. Knowing how important it is to the Queen, it just adds something really personal to the painting. Nice little impressionistic touches here. I'm getting rid of that purple that's too bland and boring, and what I'll do when that's dry is I'll paint on all the pattern of the wallpaper. Now that wallpaper is all dry, I'm putting a brown glaze over it. And that has the effect of moving the wallpaper back and pushing the Queen's head forward. It's working already. It's finally ready for unveiling to the world. That's good. And I couldn't have hoped for a better place to do that than at the Queen's Gallery itself, right next to Buckingham Palace. This is it then. All these reporters and television cameras here to see my painting. I'm getting all excited and tense once again. Wonder what they'll say about it. Listen, thanks very much, all of you, for coming along today. Shall we unveil it? What do you think? All those in favour? Right, here we go. Take a big breath. 1, 2, 3, hup. I'm bowled over by the amount of interest in the painting. I've got hours of interviews to get through now, with all the papers looking for a good quote. But you can make up your own mind, because my portrait is going to be on display here at the Queen's Gallery for the next 6 months, with free entry from 3:30 every day. I didn't set out to paint the best portrait in history, but if people get pleasure from looking at it and see some of the sparkle of the Queen's real character in it, then I'm happy.